What's up, guys? We're back here with some more league content, and today we're here for our draft analysis for the CPC Season 3. As some of you might know or might not know, I have been a part of the CPC's recent off season, and I've actually gone ahead and won my first championship there. So I was lucky enough and to be invited over to the main league. And yeah, it's upload required with GPC, and my regular uploads there coming to an end. I just thought, yeah, it's a cool idea to join this, and it's really tough competition. We have a lot of guys from the NPL, from the GPC, other well-known players from the MPL like Verd, and from MPL minus like Rob Jr. So it's gonna be a lot of tough competition in here. But as I said, it's upload required, so I have to do a draft analysis, and this is my draft analysis. The sheet you're looking at is what I made for myself to help me with drafting. As you can see, it has a bunch of stuff like it has the speed tiers I need to cover. It has hazards and removal. It has my offensive support I want to have on a draft. It has defensive options I need to have a draft. And it also has like a type chart in case I don't know or I'm not sure what mons or what typings I'm weak to. I can just put everything in there, and then I get like a good overview, and I can go from there. So it just helps me with drafting and try and get a more complete overview of a draft. Um, it's a point-based draft. We can draft 9 to 12 mons with a maximum of 110 points. So that's why we have the points. The point column right there. And yeah, we were drafting with 16 teams. I was positioned at 12th or 13th draft position. So I was rather close to the back, not directly at a wheel pick, but I had almost a wheel pick. So at my favorite draft position, because obviously some of the stuff I wanted wasn't going to be around. Like the stuff I really, really wanted in round one was mostly Mew, because I never gotten a chance to use Mew in the format. Obviously, Lando I would have been great. I don't know if I would have picked it, but it's just an idea I had. Lando T was an option. I always wanted to fuck around with that for a bit. But basically everything I want round one was already gone once it made it to me, and I was like, oh, I had a couple of stuff I wanted, but this stuff is not something that's typically looked at as a round one pick. So what I decided to do round one is just look at the sheet, decide what's the best mon around, and pick that up. And the best mon around, in my opinion, and round one was Clefable when it came to me. Starting the draft off nicely with the fairy type to fairy type to uh, start off my first core, also giving me my first stealth rocker, my first setup sweeper. It gives me a really good glue Pokemon that I can just use to take on any threat my opponent might have, which I can use. It's a threat of itself. Like I have had the struggle in the past to have more of a passive defense. Clefable isn't passive at all and gives me a really solid defensive option to the team. I haven't used it that successfully in the past, but I hope I can make it work this time around. Clefable, I'm pretty sure, is base 60 speed tier. Gives me a stealth rocker. Gives me a viable form of setup. Gives me a cleric and a wish user. And yeah, I think that's it for here. So I can cross those off. Okay, so we got Clefable. Pretty happy with that. Good Pokemon. I don't need to go too in depth about what it does. I think most of you have already seen Clefable in League format and know what it can do to carry a team. Happy with that round 1 pick. Now, when it came back to me, the mons I wanted were Zapdos or Latias. Um, both were still around by the time it got back to me, and I wanted Zapdos because it fulfilled a couple of niche roles for my team, and especially for my Mega that I planned to pick up. However, it was like a decision, it was a bit of a 50-50 at that point. Both Latias were left, and all three electric flying types, like the relevant ones, the Thundis and the Zapdos. So it was a toss-up. I didn't think I can get both, but was a 50-50 call if Ladi or the Zapdos would make it back to me, and if Zapdos wouldn't make it back to me, I still had the option to go with Thundee, which is a extremely good Pokemon in its own right. So I decided to grab Latias round 2. Obviously giving me great synergy with Clefable. Dragon Fairy is always a solid core, especially coupled with a steel type that I want to get later on, obviously. Just Ladia is already it's an offensive threat. It's another form of setup with Calm Mind. It gives me a ground immunity, which is nice. Gives me my first hazard remover, which is decent, and not bringing hazard removal much, but I want to have those on the team, just because if I feel the matchup is likely to my opponent is likely to bring hazard stack versus me, I want to have something to deal with that. Let me just Dark Ghost, Fairy, Ice, and Bug. Oh, and Dragon. Yeah, a lot of weaknesses. Anyhow, yeah, Ladia's base 110 speed tier, extremely solid, covering that speed tier. So I already have two great spread out speed tiers. Is it? No, it's not really a viable Scarfer. It's not a wall breaker. My setup viable? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Priority? Yes, with Sucker Punch, but no. So let's keep it with this. Right, we have my Ladi, Clef Ladi, solid core, both really bulky, can be defensive, can be offensive threats, both as well. So that's something I really enjoy. And yeah, so going into round 3, I was hoping and praying that Zapdos would make it all the way back to me. Fortunately, was picked a couple picks before me by another one. So what I got instead was, as I mentioned before, I got Thundurus Incarnate. Yeah, also a great Pokemon, obviously not that much defensive utility as Zapdos has, because Thundis doesn't have the reliable recovery, but Thundi is a great Pokemon nonetheless. Oh, it's 16 points. Yeah, 15 would be a bit cheap. I can't do this, right? I need to get more professional with this. Yeah, Thundi Greatmon, offensive sweeper, fast taunt, gives me a lot of volt switch and U-turn momentum if I want that, gives me viable setup, mixed options. Prankster T-Wave is my first form of real priority, so a knockoff user if I want that. Gives me, so adds a lot to the team in general. And yeah, I really like Thundurus for that. It's like a massive offensive threat. Like people usually draft one electric immunity and a secondary electric check on the team, and Thundurus' vast amount of coverage just makes it so it can easily break those kind of mons, and even those completely bulky mons with like especially defensive walls, not dependent on typing. With mixed options, Thundi is one of the few electric types that can actually break through that with ease. Plus Prankster and the utility moves it gets give me a really strong, or some really strong support options. So I love having Thundi here. Cross off my last setup form I have here. And yeah, gives me a special wall breaker more than a physical, as well as a mixed attacker. And a viable Scarfer, I'd say. It's not the best Scarfer, but it's viable if I bring it. Gives me knockoff. Yeah. Alright, moving on. Right now, what do I need next? I need to complete my Dragon Fairy Steel Core, because to cover Clef's and Ladi's weaknesses to Steel, Poison, Ice, and Fairy, what's better than a Steel type? And, I wanted a Steel type that's not too passive. I like Registeel and Bronzong are pretty good defensively, but are tending to be set up for opponents. And I wanted a Steel type that can actually switch in on other Steel types relatively well and hit them hard. So options there were quite limited. We could go with like Cobalion or Lucario, which both are reasonable options. However, neither of those it really wants to take fairy hits, which was something I was really looking at, which should be a fairy killer. Also, psychic hits sort of threaten it, and I wanted my bird resist with this, my secondary bird resist, or my primary more, because Thundurus isn't going to be my prime bird check. So what I decided to do was to grab Metagross. Now Metagross is really cool in this regard, just because it's only 12 points, which is relatively cheap in my opinion. Gives me great offensive threat, like with Rock Polish or Choice Band. It can hit extremely hard with strong coverage. I mean, we see that with Mega Metagross and OU all the time. It gives me another form of Stealth Rock, which is really nice. Gives me a solid Pursuit Trapper, which is always something to look out for, especially because it quad resists Psychic, so this limits my Psychic weakness as much as I wanted it to be weakened. It gives me, I could consider this a physical wall breaker. It gives me, and it completes my Dragon Fairy Steel Core, which is really lovely. So, draft looking good so far. It covers my base 70 speed tier as well. Obviously, Thundy in contrast to Metagross didn't give me much of a speed tier advantage, just being the one base point above Latias, but hey, nothing you can do, right? So yeah, we got Dragon Fairy Steel covered. Moving on. Next in the draft, I wanted to get something that can hazard stack, that can at the same time deal with fairies, that can take special hits from like water types, and I always try to have. Let me actually add this right here. A Scald switch in. What I consider to be a Scald switch in is something that doesn't care about the burn, like for example Clefable, but also can really deal with the water types in return. And Clefable, especially with how popular Haze has been on bulky waters, since Toxapex is around, Clefable isn't that much of a threat to most bulky waters. Obviously, I have Thunders for that, but I don't want to hard switch that into a water type. So what I decided to do, combine that with the hazard stack options I wanted, I decided to get Roserade, which is an extremely powerful special attacker with nice utility options: Leech, Sleep Powder, Toxic Spikes. Technician hidden powers make it even harder to prep for. You can run a Spadef set with Natural Cure. You can run like a lead hazard stacking mon. It has so many different options you can utilize, which makes Roserade such a key player in any balanced team, and also offensive. Can be a huge offensive menace. Looking at this team, I have 4 mons, like Thundy, not that well, but even Thundy can take some hits. But I have 4 mons that are at the same time are really defensive, or can be run really defensive, and I have mons that are at the same time can be huge offensive presence on a team. So I'm putting my opponents in a really tough spot here, having to prep for both variants of the mons I'm bringing. Yeah, Flying, Fire, Psychic. I'm forgetting like 3 things. Ice. I'm not weak to Bug, not weak to Ground. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Cool. Roserade giving me spikes, giving me T-spikes, giving me a Scald switch in. Just something I talked about. It couldn't be considered a Scarfer, even though viable Scarfer, but so not doing this right now. Not Baton Pass Dark type. Okay, and it gives me the base 90 speed here. Handy dandy. Okay, next up, as you see right here, I have a dark type stated as one of the things I absolutely want in a draft. Problem is there's only one type I really wanted, that was Greninja. And since Greninja got sniped before already, I was kind of ditched the idea of getting it. It's also a problem because I couldn't really cover. Like the only one that I liked up here that could cover this feature was Talonflame, and I disliked being forced to bring hazard removal to make him more effective. Which is why I decided to forego that for now and continue with the next part of the Fire, Water, Grass core, which would be my Blaziken. I didn't think Blaziken would be around much longer, which is why I picked it, and I think with all the offensive presence it gives the team, in between its dual stab of firefighting, which is extremely threatening to deal with, especially under the with the prospect of having viable setup opportunities, being a good baton passer, so giving me momentum there, and having great coverage in the form of Thunder Punch to deal with bulky waters if High Jump Kick doesn't do the trick. Apart from that, Knockoff obviously gives me another priority form in Vacuum Wave, gives me a really strong mixed attacker, gives me a viable Scarfer again. And yeah, I feel like complements my team really well. Gives me another Ice Check, which is lovely for Thundy, Ladi, and Roserade. So I have now two Ice Resists. So that's something I can build with. And again, it gives me a huge offensive presence. Covers my base 80 speed tier, which is nice because now the only bigger holes are in between 90 and 110, and I think we can cover that still. And on the lower end at the higher end of the spectrum. So right here, I'm pretty solidly spread out. Yeah, so I really like Blaziken, great offensive Pokemon. And yeah, continuing, I needed another Stealth Rocker. Like Metagross and Clefable are great Stealth Rockers, but none of those really wanted to carry rocks or want to carry rocks every week. And at the same time, since I needed a resist to ice and fire. So what we would go to was a bulky water type. However, the bulky water types that were available, I felt didn't really serve the purpose I wanted them to, or were too expensive in doing so. So, and I also felt like I needed this one just as you can see down here. Right now, my team is pretty weak to bolt beam. In between, with Clef not resisting either, Ladi being weak to one, my electric resists basically all weak to ice beam at the moment. So I needed a bolt beam check, and the only thing, none of the water types that were still available covered that for me. So yeah, those are the two things I wanted to look out for in my next months, because my last one was my mega, and I had that already planned out. So I knew what my other 2 months still needed to cover. So what I had here, what I felt was like the best option I had to get both a reliable bolt beam check, a good special wall, a fire and ice check, and just something that can be, again, go with the theme of this team to be an offensive threat while also being a defensive threat, was Snorlax. And Snorlax for 11 point, I think, is extremely, extremely good. Only weak to fighting, and if you look at my team right now, and even later, you'll notice that I don't have a fighting weakness like at all, which is pretty cool. Snorlax gives me another mon that can work well with Trick Room options I have in Laddie and Clefable. I think Clefable gets Trick Room, I might be wrong on that. Snorlax gives me this Bolt Beam check I wanted, gives me another Pursuit user if I've ever needed that. So really cool there. Yeah, is that it? I think that's it. Yeah, Snorlax, pretty cool there. Gives me a ghost check, which is yeah, that's something else, because I didn't find a dog type that I wanted at this point. I decided I needed to get another ghost check, and Snorlax with its huge special bulk, its huge HP stat, and the normal typing can deal with most ghosts pretty effectively, especially with having access to crunch or rest, and not being able to be like Will-O-Wisp stalled by ghost as easily. Covers Ladi's and Metagross weaknesses quite well, and the other weakness you usually have a dark type for is Psychic, and in between Ladias and Metagross and Snorlax, I can deal with most Psychics, at least defensively, pretty well. And bulky Psychics won't be a threat once you see my Mega. Last mon before my Mega was Pillow-Swine. As I said, I needed another rocker. I still needed an electric immunity to prevent Volt Switch spam versus my team. I wanted something that can take on physical attackers, while Snorlax can take on special attackers quite well. And Ice Ground is solid coverage, not that easy to switch into, as we know from Mamoswine, which is like its bigger brother. It can take on a lot of stuff, gives me another priority option, which is nice with Ice Shard, other viable one. Gives me the third Stealth Rocker I needed, covers the base 50 speed here, when Snorlax covers like 40 or 30, I don't have 30 on here, so yeah, no reason to speed creep really. And gives me the ground type I needed for my team. Yes. So that's Pillow-Swine for you. It's like a great glue Pokemon. I've used it in the off-season to great success, I think, and can take on so many threats my team could struggle with right now. This is my Edgequake check, my go-to Edgequake check. It doesn't resist Edgequake, or it doesn't resist those typings necessarily, but it can deal with them very, very effectively. Plus, my Mega is actually my Heracross Mega. So I've used that once in a tournament. I really loved it. Like, the offensive prowess this thing has while running a bulky spread, for example, is just it's awesome. Mega Heracross can easily set up substitutes and tank hits and kill back with the coverage options it had. The only things that really wall it are fairy types, defensive ones, and not even that many of them. If I run like Facade Return, I have many options there, or even Toxic if they don't have a Cleric option, or bulky flying types that aren't weak to rock, which is basically Gliscor and Lando, because like Skarmory and Steela take over 50% from close combat easily. So it just gives me this huge physical wall breaker that people can't switch into, which is something I love. I love like being able to play the game of what's your switch in, and to tear apart from the teams from there. And as I said before, I have Roserade and Metagross, which basically in the combination deal with any fairy type possible quite well, especially since my fire type Can also be fierce offensively, and fairy types will be hard pressed to deal with my Ladi and my yeah, with my Ladi already, so yeah, that's that. Obviously, I don't have a dedicated revenge killer, so I will have to run some Scarfers, but I have good priority options that I can pick weekend months with. Plus, I have the bulk to actually bulk out hits and then kill my opponent with a move, so not that worried about the lack of a revenge killer. Uh, I would have loved to get some more momentum than just U-turn volt switch on Thunders and uh, Blaziken's Baton Pass. That's why I wanted Greninja to have more pivoting options into my Heracross. But I think with the bulky offensive team I have here, I can build like balance. With the team, which is great, I can build balance, hyper offense, bulky offense. To an extent, Stally, not really, but semi-Stally, I can build this, which is really, really great. And yeah, the other thing I like is another fast Taunter, but I can make do with Thundurus right there, and a Dark type, plus a Water type. But Snorlax covers the roles I really wanted the Water type for, which is the additional Ice and Fire resist. Plus, and my Metagross is a decent enough Psychic check, and my Snorlax a decent enough Ghost check that I can. It won't make it easier not having a Dark type, but it's a really, really solid option for me to deal with Psychic and Ghost types that I can, and even Dark types aren't really that problematic for my team in between Blaziken, Heracross, and Clefable. So yeah, that's my team. I hope this wasn't too boring for you. Um, my draft analysis for the CPC, I made it really quick. I think you guys know what the mons do. I won't go too much in depth on this, and hope I could give you an insight on how I drafted this team, why I drafted this team. If I could add any one mon to this team, it would probably be like a like a Sneasel to cover the base 115, or something in the higher speed tiers, like maybe a strong offensive flying tips. But I also didn't want to stack up on more Rock's weakness than I had in Thundurus, because I'm don't want to be forced. I bring in removal if it's required, but I don't want to be forced into bringing removal, which is like a big thing for me. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Let's get this out on time, and let's hope for a great CPC season. See you week 1.